So in one moment we read from the book of Deuteronomy, our Yom Kippur reading, and it has in it two fabulous, wonderful, central ideas of the Jewish tradition. One is to choose life, and the other is Lo Bashamayim He. It is not in heaven, referring to the Torah. And it's interesting, we've done this many over the course, as long as we've been having high holiday services, it's the same Torah reading. It's interesting for our theme this year of L'chaim. The question is, what's the relationship between choose life and Lo Bashamayim He? On the one hand, they are separate ideas. This Jewish obsession in a most powerful, wonderful, positive way that we should do everything to sustain health and life in its broader sense, if we talked about l'chaim. Be happy, be healthy, long life, have a full, rich, wonderful life, and on the l'chaim, the journey of life, may it also be fulfilling and creative and productive, and is it centered on the relationship people have with other people. If there's one theme that we would love everyone who studies Judaism to understand, is that the Jewish tradition is all about people. And you know, there are very different ways of experiencing Judaism. Judaism, incidentally, is a made-up word. The Jewish tradition does not have the word Judaism in it. The equivalent of Judaism is the word Torah, not the Torah. This is the Torah. The Torah is the 5 books of Moses, which is usually in one of two forms. Either it's on a scroll with 2 wooden rollers, or in a Sephardic tradition, it is read horizontally it's read vertically as opposed to horizontally, and it's in a silver canister. If you've ever seen it, it looks like a cylinder, and it opens up. If we were looking at it here, it would open up like this, and inside would be the parchment. Inside, it's the same thing as the Sephardic Torah is the same inside as the Ashkenazic Torah on wooden rollers, but it is read in a vertical position as opposed to a horizontal position. But this is the Torah, and it's either on parchment or it's in a book form, a chumash that one can take and study anytime, or sometimes one goes into a synagogue, in fact almost all the times in a synagogue, where there is a place for the books to go in the back of every chair. There's usually a prayer book as well as a chumash. Chumash from the word 5, and Jews read chumash even while the Torah itself is being read in front of the room. And as you know, if you've ever seen a chumash, a Jewish Bible, Jewish Torah in English, you know that the text of the book is on the top, the 5 books of Moses, and then below it, whoever publishes their version of the Tanakh will put commentary. And very often the commentary is much more intense and larger than the actual text. And that becomes the Jewish mentality. The Jewish mentality is we do not read the Torah without reading Torah. And Torah is the commentary. And the word for Judaism in Hebrew is Torah, not the Torah, but the commentary that creates the entire corpus of what all of us know as Jewish life and Jewish tradition to be. And that's what Jews ultimately are bound to. The Torah is the wellspring, but Torah itself, this enormous civilization that has developed interpreting and applying the Torah, just as the Supreme Court decisions interpret and apply the Constitution of the United States. In our tradition, it is the interpretation of the Torah that becomes Judaism. And lo and behold, here on this Yom Kippur, we're reminded of the centrality of the process. And what I was about to say was there are many, many expressions of Torah, Judaism, in the Jewish world. And even last night I described being in a very traditional Orthodox minyan. And although it is not our style, there is something lovely about it. And for the people for whom that is their way of both connecting to each other and to whatever they mean by God, it is very important. And one of the things that we can never do is say that the other should be like us. It is a fundamental Jewish insight that the other is never to be deprecated. And the only thing we ask is that the other doesn't criticize us. And we have our style, and there are very many other styles as well, and they all, in some way, create this splendid Jewish people and the experience of Torah. At the same time, there is within the Jewish tradition itself a mentality, a value system, a set of principles which drive Jewish ethics, Jewish morality, Jewish family, and Jewish continuity. And in this Sedra Nitzavim, 10 Nitzavim, which you're about to read from the book of Deuteronomy, the single most important concept in terms of Jewish process, how the Jewish tradition is supposed to work, is articulated. As is this enormously central idea in Judaism that everyone is to have life. Life does not mean human existence. Life always, and even as I say it, I think to myself, it is a horrible, this term I'm about to use has been distorted horribly. The term is quality of life. Very often quality of life is applied to people at the end of their lives. And the Jewish tradition wants quality of life for our entire existence. From birth to the end, we want as full, as fulfilling, as rewarding, as enjoyable existence with people we love as humanly possible. And when the tradition says it has been set before you, life and death, blessing and the curse, therefore choose. On the one hand, it seems almost obvious. Who wouldn't choose life? But the tradition is not talking about whether you survive another day. It's talking about whether we make the effort necessary to l'chaim, both for ourselves and especially for other people. Again, it's not do we have enough? It's do we do enough? Do we give enough? And that is part of what it means to choose life. And by the way, health is very important. And it is so interesting to see how the Jewish tradition puts one's physical well-being at the forefront. And it's why Jews on every holiday, on every Rosh Hashanah, and every Yom Kippur, the first thing you wish is, may you have a year of health. And then you go on. You should be healthy and happy and prosperous and successful. But it begins with health, and sometimes it is just misunderstood within the tradition, within the community. of how important health is. And I will remind you that the fast on Yom Kippur is one of the most important of all mitzvot. And the rabbis ask, what if someone is ill? And you know that if a person is ill, do they fast or do they eat on Yom Kippur? If they're ill, they eat. And this is in the tradition. I have not yet exaggerated one bit. The next thing it says, you go to 100 doctors. 100 doctors say you're fine. One lone doctor, I think you should eat. 100 to 1, you should not eat. 100 to 1, you can fast. In that case, it's 100 to 1, you. And then it says, 101 doctors say you're fine, but you don't feel so good. And you're worried yourself. 100 doctors say I looked up, down, put you through every test I knew. You can eat, you can fast, and you don't feel you can fast. In that case, you think you should eat a little bit. In that case, you eat. And what's interesting is, as much as the tradition wants you to rely on the mumche, when it comes to your life and your health and your emotional well-being and your going forward, you always, always eat. And the tradition says, better you should break the fast this year and be around for all the fasts yet to come. That's one element in this Sedra. And the other element is this extraordinary. I hope you all appreciate when you hear it. Oh, there it is again. That wonderful Jewish notion. Lo bashamayim he. It's a great phrase to know in Hebrew. Lo bashamayim he. Lo means the negative. Bashamayim is in heaven. He, it is. It is not in heaven. She is not in heaven. And it's referring to the Torah. And it goes by that wonderful story, which I have sometime lately just summarized, but today I'm just in the mood to tell the whole story. And I'm going to tell you to exactly right this time. I'm not going to quote it. It comes from the Talmud, Tractate Baba Metzia, and it goes like this. There's an issue of whether an oven is pure or impure, clean or unclean. And the person who is in the front of the room, and it's a very complicated process, who gets to lead in Talmudic days the discussion. But the discussion is being led by a Rabbi, Yehoshua. And Yehoshua gives renders his position that the oven is, if you do this, that, and the other thing, it's clean. And there's another rabbi there who thinks that Yehoshua is wrong. Sometimes I've done this with Moses, and it's not really Moses in the story. It's Eliezer. So Eliezer is there, and Eliezer says, no, if you do it your way, it will be unclean. And there's a discussion, and the room follows Yehoshua. And Eliezer will not let go. Eliezer is sure that he is right. And when he can't convince the room or Yehoshua, he says, and this wonderful midrash, he says, wait, I can prove I'm right. If the law is as I say it should be, let the tree outside this schoolhouse, the yeshiva, prove it. And in the midrash, the tree jumps 3 cubits. And the rabbis all look out the window and they say, who learns anything from a tree? Yehoshua says, okay then, if the law is as I say it is, let the brook that is now running by this tree that's just jumped 3 cubits run upstream. Sure enough, it goes upstream. The rabbis say, who learns anything from a stream? Yehoshua said, who was it? Thank you. Eliezer says, if the law is as I say it is, let the walls of this yeshiva prove I am right, and the walls begin to fall. And a rabbi jumps up and says, rabbis would debate a point of law, and you dare fall on them? And the walls stop mid-fall. And finally, who was it again? Eliezer hasn't been able to convince them. And he pulls out the last stop. And in the Talmud, Eliezer says, if the law is as I say it is, let a bat call come and say so. Let a voice from heaven come and say so. Let a voice from heaven. Whom does he mean? Whom does he mean? Just want to make sure you're with me. So if I'm right, I want God to say so. Even in a midrash, that's a very presumptuous thing to do. To call upon God to enter the discussion. But sure enough, there's dead silence in the room, fear and awe. And a bat kol says, Waria Haken Ezekiel, the law is as he says it is. And I've pointed out to you before, in virtually every other tradition, that's where the midrash would end. If you call upon God for a definitive answer, and God answers from heaven, that's the game. But not in the Jewish tradition. And the midrash goes on, and the rabbis scream at heaven. What right do you have to interfere in our debate? What right do you have? But out. And in the Talmud, they quote Torah, our Torah passage today, to God. It is written in the Torah, Lo bashamayim hi. The Torah is not in heaven. It is in our hearts, in our mouths, in our minds to interpret and do it. You, God, gave the Torah to human beings. And the moment you did, it became ours. Even if we get it wrong, it's ours. We'll do the best we can to get it right. But we will determine what is right. And in the Midrash, in the Talmud, Baba Metzia, the next day, Elijah, who, as you know, spends most of his time in heaven, but every now and then, on Passover at other times, comes down, and there's this silly notion that he just becomes a shikker and just drinks everybody's wine and this image of this ghost, this Jewish ghost, coming in, sipping, and off he goes with his reindeer to the next house, or whatever. He has a horse instead of reindeer. But in the Midrash, Elijah's always around, and Elijah's seen walking, and some of the rabbis who are at this moment of controversy in the yeshiva come running up to him, and they say, Elijah, Elijah, what did God say when he was told to butt out? And that the Torah is not in heaven. And in the actual Midrash in Baba Metzia, Elijah says, God smiled and said, my children have won, my children have won. From now on, I stay out of it. It is for the Jewish people to live this Torah, to understand this Torah, to apply this Torah, to embrace this Torah. And I stay out of it. By the way, in the Talmud we're told that it's Ezekiel, right? Eliezer, thank you. Eliezer is put in cherem for having called upon God to speak. Cherem means he's excommunicated. In other words, and by the way, you must do a lot to be put in cherem. The idea being, it is so not what is appropriate within the Jewish mindset, within the Jewish process, within the sense of Torah, to ever ask heaven for the answer. And this has nothing to do with Reform Judaism or modern Judaism, liberal Judaism, or Golub. This isn't Golub. This is Baba Metzia. And the great Gaon of Vilna does a drash on the drash. And the Gaon of Vilna writes that the same word for win, which at the end of the Midrash is what Elijah says. God says, my children have won. My children have won. The same word that you use to the word won is the word forever. And that as long as the Jewish people continue to struggle with what this Torah means, and to struggle with understanding it and living it. And by the way, it's so important to live it. As long as they do that, it will endure forever. And that's the message on Yom Kippur. And the link between the two is that our job is not only to create life for ourselves and people we love, but for the Jewish people. We give life to the Torah by understanding the principle of Lo Bashamayim Hi, and continuing to, in community, always trying to understand what does it mean to be a lovely, caring, committed human being in relationship to others. That's the essence of all Judaism, Torah. It's all about people. How do we become as lovely as we can possibly be in our relationship with other people? And we do that by struggling with the values and the principles and the ideals that flow out of the Torah. Not the literal words. It's not about the literal words. It's about how the Jewish people over time have created a sense of ethical sensibility, of empathy, of understanding that no one may ever be a slave in any way, and that our job is to clothe the naked, house the homeless, comfort the orphan, and embrace the stranger. Embrace the stranger. And that becomes the theme, by the way, of the Haftarah that we're about to read after the Torah. It's all a gorgeous flow of ideas that hopefully, as we now are on the last day of the 10 days of awe, begins to shape the perspective we will bring to our life and our relationship to other people, where we will give the Torah life by understanding it is in our mouths and our hearts, and ultimately applying this Torah to ways in which we enhance human ability to choose life, to uplift each other, to help each other in moments of hardship and suffering and loss, and to help others, especially the younger people in our lives who are at points in their lives of still beginning wondrous adventures, to make choices of their own, and for us to be there cheering them on, so happy for them, while at the same time revering those who have made us who we are, and brought us to this point in time. That beautiful arc we talked about last night. That's what choosing life means. And that's what it is to say, from a Jewish perspective, the Torah is not in heaven. It is our way of continuing always to choose life. And we all say,
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support Shalom TV on JBS with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the Shalom TV website homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to Jem, P.O. Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.